All right, so we're going to do page 386 in your packet. And this is really just an extension on what we've been doing. But here you have a graph of a function, and now you have to come up with an equation that matches this function. Okay, so we look at this, and a lot of times what I'll do when I look at these, I see that my wave axis looks like it's right on the x-axis. It goes up to this value, down to this value. Now they told you this is 1 up here. So we're only going up to 0.5 or 1/2, and then down to negative 1/2. Okay, so your A value is 1/2. Your period from one full cycle. Now you could pick whichever cycle you want. This could be a cosine function starting here and ending here. It could be an upside down cosine function starting here and ending here. It could be a sine function starting here and ending here. I'm going to give you one or two examples of what are correct answers for this question. You really only need to write one. Let's say it's a sine function starting here and ending here. So our period would be, each one of these is 1/4. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. So 1. The period is 1. Vertical shift is where your wave axis is. The wave axis is on the x-axis, so there's none. Now this is what might change depending on where you want to start your graph. If I'm starting right here and ending here for this cycle of a sine graph, there's no horizontal shift. There's no phase shift. So I'm going to say none. Okay, so my equation, y equals c plus a sine or cosine, here I'm deciding to do sine, of b times x minus d. Okay, so that's y equals, the c is your vertical shift, so there's none. So you could say 0 or just leave that alone. Your a value comes from your amplitude. Okay, so we're going to do 1/2 sine of, okay, now the b value. Remember, we know that the period equals 2 pi divided by b. If we take this equation and solve for b, so here we know the period and we need to find b. So I could multiply both sides by b. These cancel. Divide both sides by the period, and you'll get b equals 2 pi over the period. Okay, so b is going to equal 2 pi divided by my period. My period's 1, so 2 pi over 1. So I simply get 2 pi. So my b value is 2 pi. Then I got x minus d. D is your horizontal shift, so x minus 0. Okay, we can simplify that to y equals 1/2 sine of 2 pi x. Okay, another correct answer. Let's say I want to do a cosine graph, and I want to start here and end here. Okay, so if I did this cosine graph, now my horizontal shift would be right 1/4. Okay, and it would be a cosine graph, so it would look like this, except this, instead of saying sine, would say cosine. I'm going to start here and end here. That doesn't change the period. Period is still 1. Doesn't change your amplitude. Doesn't change your vertical shift. The only thing that it could possibly change is your horizontal shift, because we decided to shift right 1/4 before we started. So you'd have y equals 1/2 cosine of 2 pi times x minus my horizontal shift of 1/4. Okay, that's another correct answer. There are an infinite number of correct answers. Okay, sometimes it's easy to just go from a max to the next max, and you know you've got a positive cosine graph. I could have gone from here to here and made it a negative cosine graph. So let's look at what that would look like. That would be y equals negative 1/2 cosine of 2 pi, but now that one's shifted 1/4 to the left, so to have x plus 1/4. All three of these are equally correct. There are an infinite number of correct answers. Okay, let's do the next one. Okay, so this, it's a little hard to see, but this is your x-axis. We go all the way up here. Up here, here's your max, which would be at 4. My min is down here. Notice these are going up by 2s, so that's at -2. My wave axis is halfway between 4 and -2. Add them up, divide by 2. 4 plus a -2 is 2. Divide by 2, you get 1. which makes sense. It looks like these points are going through at a value of 1. That's going to be my vertical shift. Remember, your vertical shift is where your wave axis is. It's not a shift up of 4 because we started here. Remember, the sine graph doesn't start at the wave axis. It starts above the wave axis. So your wave axis is your vertical shift. So my vertical shift is up 1. My amplitude is the distance from here to the top, so from 1 to 4. So that's 3. My period is 1 full cycle. If I go from bottom to bottom, from this minimum to this minimum, that's a period of pi. Even if I go from here to here, that would be pi over 2 to 3, pi over 2 to, what's that, pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, 3 pi over 2. So pi over 2 to 3 pi over 2, so that would still be pi. Okay, here is not going to change because you decide to start somewhere else. Remember, it's a periodic function. Horizontal shift, and I could do none and start here and make it an upside down cosine graph. Or you could shift right pi over 2 and do a positive cosine graph. Or you could shift right pi over 4 and do a positive sine graph. I'm going to just start here. I'm going to say none. And my function is y equals my c value. I'll write this out. C plus a sine or cosine. I'm going to do a cosine of b times x minus d. So y equals, my c value is my up 1, so 1 plus, I'm going to do a negative because I'm doing an upside down cosine, so 1 minus, my a value is 3, 1 minus 3 cosine of, looks like that's a plus, doesn't it? 1 minus 3 cosine, my b value, okay, so we have to find the b. B is equal to 2 pi over the period. Let me write that up here. B is equal to 2 pi over the period. So 2 pi over pi, which is 2. So I've got a value of 2. Then I've got x minus 0. Because I decided to start here and they have no horizontal shift. So that'd be 1. Y equals 1 minus 3 cosine of 2x. Okay. Another correct answer, let's say you wanted to do a positive cosine graph and start here. Y equals, the vertical shift doesn't change. The a doesn't change, but now it's a positive graph, so it would be plus 3 cosine of 2. B value doesn't change. And then x minus shift of right of pi over 2. Okay, that's equally correct. Okay, and then the last one on this page, so if you draw this top line up here, the bottom line down here is at 1. These are going up by 1, so 1, 2, 3. Your wave axis is at 2. Remember, your wave axis or your midline is your vertical shift, so that's up 2. Okay. I'm going to do a positive cosine graph and start here. Sometimes that's just easiest. Okay. Let's find our period. So this goes, these are going up by pi over 2s. So 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, which is pi. Period is pi. And a value is 1, distance from the middle to the top or middle to the bottom. And your horizontal shift is, I did right 3 pi over 2. Okay, again, there's an infinite number of correct answers. So y equals c plus a, I'm doing a cosine of b times x minus d. So y equals, c is my vertical shift, so 2 plus my a value is just 1. So 1 times cosine of b. Well, b is 2 pi over the period. So 2 pi over pi. Okay. And so b is going to be pi. Then I've got x minus my horizontal shift, which is right 3 pi over 2. Okay. And let's just look at a couple of them on the next page, the skills practice page. Now notice here, some of these, they say degrees. Okay, so that's your clue. If you don't know if you're in degrees or radians, You have to do radians unless you see a degree symbol when you know that's your angle. So this one's degrees, this one will be radians. This one looks a little unclear. Some of them will be in pi, and this one down here, number 8, you can see the pi, and that's usually your clue that your angle is in your x value or your angle is in radians. This one's degrees. This one, even though there's no pi, it doesn't have to have a pi in it. There's no degrees, so that has to be radians. Okay, this one's radians, that one's degrees, that one's degrees, radians, degrees. So you're going to do degrees for numbers, what is it, 2, 3, 4, and 7. 2, 3, 4, and 7. And you're going to do radians for the rest, 1, 5, 6, and 8. Okay, so this first one, let's look at the max value, the min value, and halfway between -6 and 2 should be my wave axis. It looks like it's at -2. Let's double check. -6 plus 2 is -4. Add them up, divide by 2. So -4 divided by 2 is -2. So we've got, let's write the equation, y equals c plus a cosine or sine of b times x minus d. Okay, so this is going to be y equals, you might want to write out all the things: amplitude, period, vertical shift, phase shift. So my amplitude is the distance from the middle to the top. So -2 to 2, that's a distance of 4. Period is 1 full cycle. Okay, I'm going to go from here. These are going up by 3. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. So I'm going to go from top to top, from a max to the next max. I'm going to do this cycle. Again, there's an infinite number of correct answers. But that period from 9 to 21, 21 minus 9 is 12. Okay. Vertical shift is where your midline is, so down 2. Phase shift, I decided to do this section and do a positive cosine graph, which is a shift of right 9. Okay, so y equals c. C is your vertical shift, which was down 2, so -2 plus my amplitude, so 4 cosine of b. Okay, we have to calculate b, and this is where it's key to know that this one's in degrees. So b, running out of space, let's do it over here. B is 2 pi divided by the period, so 2 pi divided by my period's 12. So 2 pi over 12, or pi over 6. So we've got a pi over 6, and then I've got x minus d, which is my horizontal shift, so x minus 9. Okay, so there is your answer for this one. And then let's do, maybe we'll do one in degrees. How about, we could do number 8 over here. Okay, so amplitude, period, vertical shift, phase shift. So the amplitude is the distance from the middle to the top. Okay, so it looks like your max is at 8, your min is at -2. Let's double check that the midpoint, or the average of those two, should average to the midline. So 8 plus -2 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. Okay, so your amplitude is the distance from here to here, which is 5, or the distance from here to here. Period. Let's go, actually, this one's kind of tough because we don't know where that is here. It looks like it hits at 10, but let's confirm. This one we know is at -20. So I'm going to do this section. They were nice enough to give us this point for this one on the midline. Okay, so the distance from -20 up to +100 is a total of 120. So your b value is going to be 2 pi over the period, or since this is degrees, it's 360 over the period over 120. 360 over 120, so your b value is 3. In my phase shift, I'm starting here, so I'm going to say left 20. Okay, so you've got y equals your c value. C value is your vertical shift, so 3 plus your a value, which my a value, my amplitude. Oh, I didn't write the vertical shift there. Up 3. So the a value, which is comes from your amplitude, it's positive because it's a right side up sine graph. And then we've got a sine graph, so sine of b, we found b to be 3. And then x minus d, well, it's going to be plus, because x plus, we're shifting 20 degrees to the right. Okay. And there are, of course, multiple correct answers. And then let's go down to number 8. Oh, yeah, we'll do number 8. But this was number 4. I think I said number 8 because I saw that 8 there. So number 4. Now we'll do 8. Okay. That top line is at 2. The bottom line's at -3. Now notice they didn't give us the midline, but we can still find it. The midline is halfway between 2 and -3. Okay. So 2 plus -3 is -1 divided by 2. Our midline is at -1/2. Okay. So we've got amplitude, period, vertical shift, phase shift. So the amplitude is the distance from the middle to the top and middle to the bottom. So from -1/2 to 2 is 2.5. Let's call it 5/2, 5/2. Period. Okay, I think it's easiest to go. Oh, you could go here to here. -pi to pi, that's a period of 2 pi. Or you could go from here to here. I'll do this one. That goes from pi to 3 pi, so the period is 2 pi. Vertical shift is your midline, so down 1/2. And I decided to start here, so that my horizontal shift is right pi. Okay, so my equation, y equals c plus a cosine of b times x minus d. So that's y equals c is your vertical shift, so down 1/2, -1/2, plus my a for amplitude, 5/2, cosine. My b, okay, so b is 2 pi over the period, or 2 pi over, period's 2 pi, so 2 pi over 2 pi. So my b value is just 1. So I've just got a 1 there. So I don't even need to put the 1 there. And I've got x minus my horizontal shift, which is pi. One of your many correct answers, okay? And I will post the answers to the rest of these. I hope that was helpful. See you all soon.